Okay, I'm going to start in a couple of minutes. Well, I hope you all had a nice weekend. First of all, most everyone did quite well on the quiz. And coming up this Friday will be the first exam. And it's going to cover the whole first module. Basically, it will be the stuff we've already gone over, maybe some different questions. And today I just want to run through all that. You have 4 days to study, but you can begin working on module 2 if you feel like you're at a good place with module 1 there. Module 2 should be a lot more fun than module 1. It's going to talk about abnormalities and maladaptive behaviors and look at the brain when things aren't working the way it's supposed to work. But for today, I just want to make sure everybody's studying the right thing and that you're picking it up. It's very important that you know this basic stuff. It'll make everything else a lot easier. I think everybody knows the 4 lobes of the cortex. Do you all know where this review is in on your program there?
Yes, it's in modules under the quiz that we just took on the 17th.
Yes, it is. But I just want to review it one more time. Four lobes of the cortex, of course, is a frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. Just know in general what those functions are for those. And the cerebellum, of course, is balance. Know where the limbic system is. You don't have to know every detail about it, but just have an understanding where it is in the midbrain there. Hippocampus, that's going to keep coming up. Just think of memory when you think of the hippocampus, and it's part of the temporal lobe. The pons, part of the brain stem. Pons means bridge, so it communicates with frontal cortex, and it's responsible for making neurotransmitter. The medulla, of course, part of the brain stem, and it's pretty much automatic. Manages the functions that you don't have to think about doing. The thalamus is like the traffic cop of the brain, and it's right in the midbrain, and everything passes through the thalamus and then to the cortex, and the cortex sends instructions back about how to handle whatever is happening. Corpus callosum, middle of the brain, not that important. Basal ganglia, that's in the midbrain, and it's responsible for organizing movements and reactions and sequencing. The amygdala, you're going to hear time and time again because it's associated with anxiety and fear. And it too is in the part of the midbrain, and it's also listed in the forebrain, but just remember that it's associated with fear. Mention the cerebellum. Midbrain, just understand the function of the midbrain in general. Hypothalamus, know that it's associated with appetite and urges that people have, sexual urges. And it's also associated with the pituitary and endocrine system. So that's something you're going to see again and again. One thing I didn't go over before that you do need to be familiar with, and that is the directional planes and areas. So you know when you're looking at a slide what view you're having, because it can look different from different views. So make sure you have an understanding of what a sagittal cut is, what a coronal or frontal cut is, posterior, medial, know what lateral is, and dorsal, ventral. And it's not a lot to know there, but just understand what orientation that you're looking at. So I guarantee there will be one question on that, so make sure you understand it. Know the difference between the CNS and the peripheral nervous system. CNS is basically just the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system are the nerves throughout the body. Neuron types, I haven't talked much about that, but there are sensory neurons and there are motor neurons. Sensory are known as what's called afferent, which means that they sense the environment and take in information. The motor neurons originate inside of your brain and spinal cord, and they send out messages to the muscles of what to do. So know the difference between afferent and efferent. The autonomic nervous system, haven't talked a lot about that, but just understand there's some things that work on their own. You don't have to think about it. Methods, there are will be a question on that again, and it's mainly just differentiating the methods and the interventions that are used to study either the brain or the behavior that's occurring. Physiological intervention, behavioral intervention, and brain behavior correlation. As far as brain behavior correlation, need to know what an EEG is and what an MRI is. They are two most common studies used for studying the brain electrical activity and having an image real time of the brain, and know what the advantages are by the use of those two tools. This is just basic anatomy here, and I think everyone is pretty much up to date on what the neuron looks like: the cell body, the dendrites, the axon, and the terminal end of the axon where the buttons are and where the neurotransmitters are released from the cell. We're going to talk a lot more about neurotransmitters in the next module, but it's important to know where they originate. Okay, and I think everyone did quite well on the action potential. That is one of the basic things of studying nerves or cells in the body. Same principle works in the heart and at other places in the body. But always remember that sodium is extracellular, potassium is intracellular, and inside the cell, the voltage is minus 70 millivolts, and that's at resting. And the action potential takes place at the cell membrane when sodium rushes in and increases the millivolts to a trigger point, and then the action potential fires, and it's an all or nothing type of phenomenon. So it fires and then it's over, and then the cell hyperpolarizes for an instant, and it goes through the refractory period, then it can fire again. But this happens so quickly that it's pretty much instantaneous. And basic physiology is knowing that positive charge on the outside is going to be attracted to the negative charge on the inside, but it can only get through the cell membrane through channels. And there's a sodium potassium pump to help correct things and get back to the resting potential again, so that the nerve cell's able to fire again. So understand polarization, depolarization, and hyperpolarization. Just get a concept in your mind. There's not really not a lot more to know about it. Know what a graded potential is, and that's when the millivolts rise toward positive, but not quite enough to trigger the action potential. And if enough graded potentials are occurring, eventually it reaches that threshold, which is 65 minus 65 millivolts. Understand that when a nerve fires, it either sends a signal that is inhibitory or excitatory, and it can be one or the other, and any nerve cell might be receiving several messages from other nerve cells, and there is a summation to when it finally reaches that trigger point or threshold. Know that the axon is really where the conduction occurs, and the axon connects with other neurons either on the cell body or with dendrites, or it can be a presynaptic connection, but there's no one single place where it connects with the neighboring nerve cell. Basically, have an understanding of the neurotransmitters. The ones that you're going to see over and over, of course, are dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and those are the big three. Of course, acetylcholine is important also, and the neuropeptides that we're not really getting into, but just know what substance P and endorphins are. They are major neuropeptides. Understand about the synapses, there's an ionotropic, which is the sodium potassium issue we've been talking about. And thing to remember about it is it's instantaneous, it's quick, it's over with. The other important type of synapse is called metabotropic synapse. And the thing to remember about it is it involves a second messenger in order to complete its process. And this type of synapse is much slower, and often it goes straight to the nucleus of the next cell and can affect change, genetic type change. And that explains a lot of how environment plays a role in brain development. Okay, types of synapses. As I said before, the axon can connect with the dendrite of the next cell or connect with the cell body. Okay, these are neurotransmitters. I just mentioned. What I didn't mention that is quite important is the major inhibitory neurotransmitter is GABA, and this is the basis of many drugs that control seizures, or benzodiazepines also activate the GABA system. And GABA is the major inhibitory neurotransmitter. Glutamate is a major excitatory neurotransmitter. And you will see that again, GABA and glutamate. As Dr. Adams said here, you don't need to go into deep detail, but you need to understand something about each one of these neurotransmitters. Norepinephrine is associated more with anxiety disorders. Serotonin is associated more with depressive disorders. And GABA, as I said, benzodiazepines. These two neuropeptides are associated with pain control and dealing with severe trauma. Dopamine will appear over and over. Dopamine is associated with addiction, which we'll get into in the next module. Also is important in the prefrontal cortex, where there's a deficiency in condition like ADHD. And it also is important in movement. So it's associated with movement disorders like Parkinson's disease when the dopamine cells stop working. Acetylcholine is associated more with muscle movement and also with diseases like Alzheimer's. There's an acetylcholine deficiency. Oxytocin is more of a hormonal type neurotransmitter. And it's, if I'm not mistaken, made in the pituitary gland. Okay, there it is again. GABA inhibitory, glutamate excitatory. Don't ever forget that. Okay, this test will be a little bit more inclusive, so you'll be able, or I need to be able to answer things in the form of a very short essay, just to be sure that you really understand it. So be prepared to have at least 3 questions, but these are take-home questions, so you don't have to complete it in that short period of time. You'll have time to work on it at home. And basically it will involve the stuff that I just went over. Okay, so as I said, you have until Friday to review this stuff and make sure that you know it. And we'll be ready to move on to the next module, which is already open. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. But for class Wednesday, I would like for you to open module 2 and look at what is called a fun quiz there. It's talking about drugs and effects on the brain. This is a pre-test, so there's no pass or fail. It's just mainly for discussion and to determine where you are as far as addiction. And let's see if I can find that. Okay, I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at this yet or not, but nothing to be taken seriously, just kind of a starting point here. And kind of a self-assessment. And here are these 16 questions here. They're all true or false. So if you have no idea, you still have 50% chance of getting it right. And just start moving along with this second module here, and we'll talk about it on Wednesday. Are there any questions today? If not, I'm going to let you use the rest of the time to study. If you have any issues or problems, just contact me through the email and we'll see what we can do to help you. And that's all I have for today. So make sure you're good with module 1. You'll be tested on it Friday, and start reading module 2. It's going to work just like module 1. Everything you need to know is here. If you want to refer to the textbook some, you're welcome to do that, but it's not necessary as far as what you'll be tested on. And if there's nothing else, I'll see y'all on Wednesday, okay?
Okay.
All right, have a good afternoon.
You too.
So-
Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
So we just have to, oh wait, this quiz isn't for a grade, right?
No, this is just for fun.
So for the test coming up, we
Mhm.
just should review like the quizzes and the sheet you just read from, and we'll be good.
Yeah, make sure you understand everything on the quiz. If you just got lucky and got an answer right, then that's not going to help you much. But if you have a good understanding of it, you're okay. And the only thing that might be new is viewing the brain from different angles and knowing what a sagittal cut is, a coronal cut. And
Do you know how many questions it's going to be?
28 questions.
Okay.
And then there's the essay that you don't have to do right away. It's one you turn it in. Have y'all used that before?
Yes.
Okay, well, it's my first time, but I'm trusting that it's not that difficult. All right, anything else?
No, have a good day.
All right, take care.